have one final panel session that brings together the CEOs of the 4 organizing partners of Invest Malaysia Iskandar 2024. So now, please join me in welcoming on stage Datuk Muhammad Umar Swift, Chief Executive Officer of Bursa Malaysia, Datuk Khairussaleh Ramli, President and Group Chief Executive Officer, Maybank, Mr. Novan Amirudin, Group Chief Executive Officer, CIMB Group Holdings, and Dato Omar Siddiq bin Amin Noer Rashid, Chief Executive Officer, HSBC Bank Berhad. This conversation will be moderated by Mr. Malek Ali, Founder and Managing Director, BFM 89.9. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, a reminder that you can send your questions over to our panelists via Slido. To access Slido, you can scan the QR code on the back of your event tags. We will also have microphones available to you if you would like to pose your questions to the panelists in person, and our ushers will guide you with that.
Great, thank you.
Malek, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks very much.
No, gentlemen, look.
Oh,
look
sorry. You first.
Do you see any staff any of your staff here, Khairussaleh? Yeah, almost. No, we were just joking amongst ourselves. And anyone who's not from Bursa, Maybank, HSBC or CIMB, yes, thank you for being here.
Raise your hands. Anyway, I promise you, this will be the most interactive session. That I can promise. So we're going to do something different right now. There'll be mic runners around. If your bosses are here, you want to ask them about the next bonus period, just raise your hand. It's okay. It's going to be a bit of ask me anything about Invest Malaysia or Johor SEZ. So JSSEZ. I'd like to put the questions to you. Please go on Slido. Slido, you can just do your QR code on your badge, the badge that you have, and you can get into the Slido system, and then you can answer questions there. I have an iPad here. I will flash up your questions, so don't ask too rude a question. I will put it up. I'll put it up there, and we'll see how we go. Right? Come in, everyone. Let's get the show going. So, JSSEZ, quite a mouthful. But there is something about, when I meet folks and they say, who are the, who are the big guys in the world? I always say the guys who manage capital. You guys are the big guys in the world. Us entrepreneurs kind of like dance to your beat, right? And so I guess the role of financial capital, what's the role of financial institutions in making JSSEZ a success? Can I start with you, Novan? Sorry, I have to ask the newest CEO. Is it newest? I think so. For this question, this is your trial. This is your baptism by fire.
Thank you. So, how we look at JSSEZ is really. It's Johor and Singapore as being complements. It's about having, businesses today that, for example, is in Singapore, but would like to take, certain benefits from, having part of their operations being based in Johor. So you would see, companies operating potentially in multiple jurisdictions. So that could be one angle. So you have a Singapore company who would like to offshore some of the middle and back operations into Johor, be based in Johor SEZ. So where we see our role as financial institutions is trying to facilitate companies who want to operate within multiple jurisdictions. So not just purely providing capital or providing loans, but really helping businesses tackle the challenges that they face in operating in multiple jurisdictions. One of the biggest challenges would be volatility when it comes to foreign exchange rates, for example. There's different regulations. There's potentially different incentives. we as a financial institution want to help businesses, to mitigate some of these risks. So, we can help them with, FX flows, with FX hedging, to try to mitigate some of that risk. Help them with operating accounts, if your business in Singapore, but you have an operating account in Malaysia. Within that operating account, you can then make your payments, you can make payments of salaries. So it's really the whole entire package of, providing FX solutions, providing operating account solutions, and then, of course, financing.
Okay, all right. Datuk Khairussaleh, on your side, you have a presence, Maybank has a presence in both, quite a big presence in Singapore, as well as Malaysia, and both your contingents are here in this auditorium, right? The Singapore side and the Malaysia side. The Singapore side that has no excuse not to be here today. But I guess, what are your clients, both on the consumer as well as maybe more pertinently the corporate side, saying what they want from you in terms, the fact that you're originally Maybank's from Malaysia. What do they want from you, being a bank based in Singapore, right? What does the Singapore side want from you?
If I take a step back, right, your first question earlier about what we've been doing is about the awareness and building a narrative about why people should invest in Johor. So then we come from the point of Malaysia first, right, as an investment destination surrounding green economy, surrounding new technology, surrounding infrastructure, surrounding what the GLICs are going to invest domestically, and last but not least is JSSEZ. And then as we look at JSSEZ, right, if you look at Singapore, the size of Singapore is about 750 square kilometers, right? And then when you look at the size of JSSEZ in Johor, Iskandar, Pengerang, Ulai, and Pasir Gudang. That area is 3,500 square kilometers. So by sheer size, it's 5 times bigger than Singapore. So in terms of land, we have got abundance of land, right? Secondly, cost. We all know that here is 3 times lower than Singapore, right? Third is linking back to the country investment narrative on green and renewable, right? So in terms of energy, we will have a lot of energy, but the best thing is that tie it to the narrative of clean energy, right, and renewable. So I think that's our job in terms of building that narrative from the country perspective into specific investment story for Johor, right? Now, what I think many of us would be disappointed today that the Prime Minister didn't announce anything specific, right? I think we all are. But of course, maybe he is still subject to OSA, right? But we can't wait for that. We can't wait for that. We have to start, thinking about what we think the opportunities are. And of course, we've been doing investment seminars, forums for our customers in Singapore, etc. We have brought Mr. MB Johor to Singapore, right, to meet clients and corporates in Singapore.
How did that go? How did that go?
I think they are all excited. And again, this is the best thing. We do not have to wait for the signing of the agreement of JSSEZ by end of the year, right? Because we can start mobilizing things, right? I think the good thing is that all 3 of us, we've got presence in Malaysia, we've got presence in Singapore, right? So what if our customers in Singapore don't even have to go to any of our branches in KL or in Johor, whatever? We will facilitate onboarding of these customers for their purposes in Johor from their office in Singapore themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That sounds great. That sounds great. Is that what's happening with HSBC in Singapore? you have a slightly different structure, but you don't control both sides. You only control the Malaysia side. But are your Singapore compatriots saying anything?
Echo on. Sorry, is it on? Sorry. No, I echo what Dato Khairul and Novan was saying. I think everyone was saying today. Ultimately, the case for Johor and JSSEZ in particular is clear-cut. I mean, whenever we stand back and look at the fundamentals, Johor specifically sits at the center of critical trade routes, right, linking east and west. We've got access not only to the ports in Johor, the inland ports, deep water ports, but also the ports in Singapore. We talk about aviation connectivity. We've got Senai, but we've also got access to Changi. So when we take it as a package, it's a very compelling package. And I think that's something that has been sort of overlaid with even more interesting stuff, right? For example, the efforts that Khazanah and the federal government in the early 2000s had started through the CDP, as Rudy was talking about in the earlier session, about laying out the plans to codify what government can do, working with the state government to create the right infrastructure to support taking this place forward. And you overlay that, of course, with the skill talent that we have, the fact that, for example, Johor has the highest English literacy, I think one of the highest English literacy sort of rates in Peninsular Malaysia, for example, beyond the Klang Valley and Penang. You've got, obviously, the rule of law that we have. You already have a huge manufacturing base, all of that. So investors are very, very excited, and they've always been. I think exactly what Dato Khairul was saying, even before this JSSEZ is codified, we have so much investment already in Johor. What Rudy was saying and the CEO of Invest Johor was saying, we've already had, since the launch of the first CDP, close to 400 billion ringgit already invested since 2005 into Johor. And that covers across manufacturing, services, and already today, again, I think the earlier panel with the GLIC CEOs talking about what this current Madani government has done in terms of setting out clarity in terms of policy around NIMP, NETR, etc. There's so much opportunity, whether it's renewable energy, whether you talk about wellness, healthcare, beyond the standard stuff that we talk about in terms of back office, middle office, blah, blah, blah. And on top of that, there's so much already underlying with Johor. For example, Johor is the largest fruit producer in Malaysia. It is the second largest vegetable producer. So food security, that's another sort of, it's an alternative breadbasket for Malaysia. So as far as I'm concerned, what we see in HSBC, the HSBC network, our clients are always interested about Johor, and that conversation is being had not just here in Malaysia or in Singapore, but in Hong Kong and in London and the US. Sorry, long-winded answer.
No. Umar, I'll come back to you in other questions, but I want to cover Slido first. I think if you can flash the Slido question up, then this is how we can start being interactive. I'm going to publicize what you guys put up there. There's 2 questions on salaries, but I will just not flash that up yet. I'll leave that for the end. Here. You can actually, you can see it here as well. In front of you, Omar, on that side. You can see on the screen on front. So you don't have to crane your neck so much. Industry players remain skeptical. No, if you feel that you want to ask your question yourself after saying Slido, instead of remaining anonymous, I'll really welcome it because it'll be really fun. Industry players remain skeptical about lack of digital and public infrastructure, skilled labor, and policy inconsistency in JSSEZ. What are your thoughts on this? Any thoughts? I guess you're not really the JSSEZ players, but are you, from what you've heard, are you seeing, well, actually we're getting better at this?
Yeah, I think, there's a degree of healthy cynicism there, but you're getting granularity, it's step by step, so let's not put the cart before the horse. So not being defensive, there's the observation that you need skilled talent, you shouldn't have differential opportunities between different geographic sites. I mean, these were the conversations we've been having over the past few weeks. And let's take it step by step. But more importantly, I think there's a clear call to action. Do you need, and it's a mouthful, JSSEZ? I think there's a case even without it to come to Johor already. If I was operating, say for example, I was a bank, not picking any bank in particular, and I had data centers in Changi, not mentioning any names either, I would be thinking about what is my replacement strategy. I would be thinking about, where would I go? I need clean energy. Malaysia has clean energy. Singapore won't. I need access to water. Why does it need water? Because clean energy, water, data center, these all come together. Johor has this and recognise these are issues. The Chief Minister touched on it this morning. And so as you look at these issues and the awareness that first you have to recognise you have an issue, then you begin to address it. So I think that's the important thing to take away. So proof of the pudding, of course, is in the eating. Let us see where we go. But if I was already operating in Singapore and I wanted to reduce my structure, energy's energy, I want green energy, I would be thinking about the transitioning my data to Singapore, from Singapore to Johor. Yeah. Why Johor? I mean, there's probably also a conversation Johor versus KL, but I would be thinking Johor because I want resiliency. I want to bring my existing team across. So perhaps the most important thing is to look at border access, not necessarily tax rebates, but ease of movement for our respective workforces.
Yep. I think we met at breakfast, and I think the conversation about sort of, if we actually improve that access, that connectivity, the water will find its own level, right? If it just takes 15 minutes to get from Johor to Singapore and vice versa, I think this place would explode, right?
I mean, you look at the differential of land cost. I mean, getting back to the point, Khairussaleh made 750 square miles, kilometres versus 3,500. The case is for itself. Then you overlay that with clean energy, strategies that make sense, growing a skill set. I think it's a positive outcome on it.
Okay, all right. I moved on to the next question, and this, any plans on partnering up with local Johorian fintechs to boost financing avenues for local startups and businesses in supporting the SEZ? Now, it's interesting. Local Johorian fintechs kind of like puts a geographical constraint around that that fintech thing, which is meant to be a bit more scalable, a bit more, sort of at least national level. But let's just not just worry too much about Johorian part. But is there any opportunities in the fintech area in a specific geographical location? Or do you think that's more of a look, fintech, it's going to apply nationally? Right?
Well, I mean, for example, we're running a program with MDEC where we're actually looking at innovation. But that's actually worldwide. So we have a problem statement and we invite fintech, we invite people to come up with ideas to actually solve problems. Some of those problems a majority of the respondents are Malaysian, but some are offshore, and it shows an interesting diversity and richness.
Okay. Here's another one. I like this one. Do you think there is a bubble forming in the data center industry due to AI hype? Well, that's debatable whether it's hype. I think there's still people arguing about that. How should we remain competitive yet resilient for Malaysia? I have one more follow-up question to this, which is also data centers, they don't employ very many people, right? So is there a bubble in this space? When you get a proposal for someone, say someone's coming to you and say, you know what, we want to build a data center in Johor. What would your credit manager say? What would your credit committee say? No, Datuk Khairussaleh? Yep, why not?
We want to avoid this being a property play. Right? And because of that, we will look at the principles themselves, right? So whoever wants to build, it's not just, we don't stop there. We look at the principles of who is going to be the off-taker. Right? That's one. And then even if there is an off-taker, we also want to make sure that it's diverse. We cannot just have, one off-taker for the entire data centers that are being built in Johor, for that matter, in the whole of Malaysia, right? So I think the first and foremost is that we have to avoid this being a property play and look at the end principle as the off-taker with that diverse client base.
Yeah. All right. So, okay, look at it as a portfolio, make sure that we got an off-taker who is like, if it's Microsoft, an off-taker, no problem. If it's if it's China as an off-taker, interesting. If it's Alibaba as an off-taker, why not, right? Okay, I think that's a great answer. To the point about employment, how much employment it generates, do you see that as something to be cautious of, or actually it's no problem because there will be maybe unintended benefits from having data centers in Malaysia? Omar.
I mean, I think first, number one, looking at the question, credit's credit. Khairussaleh addressed that. So credit's always good credit's good credit, as a former Maybank. That being said, when you look at data centers, everyone says, well, it doesn't employ people, it doesn't do... But you actually have to look at the industry that it supports, the thinking it supports. And so that becomes the national strategy, that how do you leverage this capacity that is being brought onto our domestic shores, Malek? And that is something that's actively discussed and being looked at.
Okay, great. Next question. Let me just play around with this a little bit to get that off. Yeah, I like this one. Novan, you can look at the front. You don't have to crane your neck. I saw you craning your neck a couple of times. Someone here heard that Singapore is okay with the SEZ, but remain cautious of the SFZ at Forest City, since financial industry is one of its core competency. And you can see it kind of like mirrored in terms of like, family offices, we're targeting, kind of like the same or not the same, we're not sure. Are we, is it the same amounts? What are your thoughts on SFZ, Singapore's approach to SFZs? How would they see Forest City? Will they see it as a rival, or, at least like, okay, you know what, we're going to place more emphasis on SEZ? Do you sense at all in your trip to Singapore with is there some trepidation about SFZ? Yeah.
I think they serve two different purposes, at least for Johor. Right? SEZ, simplistically put, is about collaboration with Singapore. SFZ, in a way, is about competing with Singapore. Right? So then obviously that question, is quite natural, right? So I guess we have to look at, it's a natural reaction from Singapore, I guess, potentially for SFZ. But I guess SEZ, they can benefit as much as Johor can benefit. That's how I would answer.
So there is, so it's interesting. Any alternative point of view, or is that kind of like, what?
No, I agree to some extent it's competing, but it could also complement in a sense where, look, when you have SEZ, you need capital to expand into, say you're in Singapore, to expand into Johor, you need capital. Capital can come in many forms. Capital could come from the bank. Capital could come from the capital markets. And capital markets require investors. So SFZ is out there to get capital to be invested in Johor as part of family offices. That capital needs to be invested somewhere. So I think if you just look at it simplistically, you might think that it's competing, but at the end of the day, it's all about getting a lot more capital onshore, which could benefit companies who want to expand into Johor via the SEZ.
Great. Now here's a very banking question. I think I flashed up a little bit. Are banks seeing noticeable increases in trade financing as trade numbers improve? And I think this is probably not directed as just Johor, but just generally. I think this comes in with our kind of like why Malaysia kind of like theme, why when we're seeing the GDP growth going up. Are you seeing this reflected in your sort of trade financing? Omar first, HSBC.
Sorry, thanks for the question. My favorite statistic is this, right? Malaysia is a top 40 country GDP-wise globally, but we're a top 25 trading nation globally. So we always punch above our weight. We are a trading nation, we are an open economy. And I think the level of trade financing that we see in Malaysia is proportionate to that. And I don't think there's any lag, whether it's with the, the banks, the big banks like CIMB and Maybank, or with the international banks like HSBC and so on. I think that's something that's always there. Of course, there are opportunities to improve and so on. We were talking to the ASEAN Secretariat, for example. The ASEAN Secretary General was saying that in his view, and I think that's something that's going to be on the agenda for the ASEAN chairmanship for Malaysia going forward, that the level of trade facilities being made available ASEAN-wide is not as high as it should be relative to other sort of regions. But that, I think, is coloured by certain jurisdictions maybe. But as far as Singapore and Malaysia is concerned, I think the level of trade facilitation and trading products is, I think, quite sophisticated. Sorry.
Okay. All right. No. All right. Okay. Good. All right. So we will see that as time continues. That's for sure. Here's an interesting one. I'll put you on the spot a little bit. Well, Maybank, CIMB, HSBC set up a major branch in Forest City, and by when? Wow, got timeline some more.
We already have a branch in Forest City.
Yay! Can it be a multi-bank branch?
I mean, if the other banks want to share the cost of the rental, yeah, why not? Yeah, but we already have a branch. Yeah.
Okay, great, fantastic.
In fact, we have 7 branches around Iskandar.
Oh, okay.
So close to 30 branches in Johor, 7 of which are in Iskandar.
And 1 in Forest City.
And 1 in Forest City.
Yeah. HSBC.
Well, unfortunately, we live in a regulated industry, so in order for us to sort of open branches, we need Negara's approval. So we'll be in conversation with Bank Negara, I'm sure. Thank you.
Oh, nice pass. Nice pass.
We've got so many clients in Johor. So Iskandar wants us to open a branch. Forest City wants to open a branch. But in Johor itself, we've got 37 branches already.
Wow.
We already have one in Kalampata as well. So, and apart from that, we also have 18 in Singapore. So we're not short of branches, but of course, we will look at, what makes sense for us.
Yeah, we have to be rational and, practical about it. Sorry, this one is a bit technical, I'm not sure, but I would like maybe to open up, use this opportunity. If any of you have any sort of questions that you'd like to ask in person, there's mics around, and all I ask is that you just give your name, that's it, and then, and where you're from, your organization from, and just ask the question. Otherwise, I'll just plow through the Slido. And this, I'd like to just open up beyond the panel, because I think this is quite an important question. What are your thoughts on the expansion of the renewable energy supply through TNP power grid due to higher energy clean demand from data centers within JSSEZ? And actually also, I think there's also this sort of agreements between Singapore and trying to import renewable energy into Singapore via our grid, right? So have you seen any proposals on your side, at least from on the banking side, about anyone participating in this, requiring financing, or any word on the street about this? What?
So just from my limited experience, I think we're a relatively small bank compared to Maybank and CIMB. But on this space, I think our understanding in conversations with data centers or owners, obviously they want a steady supply of power. So that base load is important, consistency of base load. Similarly, also in respect of water supply. So I think the issue with renewable energy, and that's not just with Malaysia, I think it's something that we see globally, and it's something that I think we are grappling with as a nation, and we see that in conversations with respect to the NETR and so on. It's ensuring that we have that ability to have consistent base load of supply. And I think that's something that's a challenge. So it's always solving for the trifecta, which is sustainability, affordability, and security. So obviously renewables address sustainability, but affordability is still, and we had this conversation at lunch, affordability is still also a concern relative to grid, relative to what we have today, and of course, security. So one, I think PM had spoke about it yesterday or the day before, that he wants all new data centers to have clarity on how they would then also help to invest in renewable energy as part of the mix, the supply mix. I think Minister Zafrul also has been talking about it, and I think they will be coming out with the guidelines if that's not already been out already. But one potential way is to look at sort of captive renewables as a portion to complement the grid with specific data centers or industrial parks. That's what we've seen so far.
Okay. All right. Can I, from the audience, who's Samuel Tan? Can you stand up, please? Samuel Tan, hi Samuel. Hi, you had 2 questions. And could you pass the mic on to Samuel, please? Samuel, what was your second question?
I can remember.
The one about
my first question,
about SFZ.
Yeah, my first question is whether the SFZ will go beyond Forest City and will extend to Madini or IIBD, which I think would be more suitable to complement the Forestry FSZ.
I think the issue with Samuel is that basically the panel here will not be able to, they're not part of government, so they don't know the answer to that. And already we had someone saying it's a special thing, right? A special thing for Forestry. But I think a more pertinent question is the free trade zone, right? Free trade zone, do you see it extending to Madini and IIBD, right? So do you think that's a positive thing if we move the free trade zone to a larger area? If I can move the question there.
I think there are already, I think it is a good move. And in fact, there are already companies that are thinking about doing that in Iskandar Puteri already.
Yeah.
So obviously that will create, a bit of excitement in terms of bringing in investment and trade to a free trade zone area. So I believe maybe at the moment I'm not very clear in terms of the framework, but what I understand is that there are companies that are already thinking about setting up, certain free trade zone areas for their own businesses within Iskandar.
Yeah. Okay. So the few zonal kind of things that happening. Any other questions from the floor before I hope I didn't deter people from putting their names on the Slido. No, everyone's like anonymous. Okay, I like this one. This is all right. The ringgit seems to be performing well against USD. It is performing. Not seems to be. It is, right. But I was a skeptic for sure. Sorry again? Global banking. Okay. I love the passing. I love the tai chi. Okay. Is it sustainable? How long will it last?
I'll defer to my bigger brother, Dato Omar, shortly. Just very quickly, I think from our perspective, look, with respect to FX, and I think there are many more qualified people to answer the question in the room today. It's two things, right? One, I think, is obviously the overall global supply and demand. So, you have the issues around the Fed's interest rate movements, etc., and then dollar versus ringgit, etc. But the other element, which I always find very important and is a good understanding of what will happen, is the long-term underlying fundamentals of Malaysia, right? As I keep saying, Malaysia is a open and trading nation. It has strong fundamentals. When we look at ASEAN today, political stability, we've got it in terms of when you look at things like data centers, etc., where it needs that stable geography. We have that geological advantage, so we're outside the ring of fire. That's always been there. We see with semiconductors, E&E. So, and then on top of that, we have this steady workforce. We still have 35 million people in the country, although we're slightly aging, but we still have, contrasted to our peers in the region, a good set of skilled workers. We still have the fundamental elements of rule of law. We practice obviously Malaysian law, but comparable to English law, etc. So long-term investments, we're still seeing that. And I think what the Madani government has been very good at is putting out its stall through the NIMP, to the overall Madani framework, to give a long-term perspective as to what this government wants to see. It is about, as I said, raising the ceiling, but also raising the floor. So it's becoming a proper modern democracy in that sense, with modern sort of economic norms. So to my mind, Malaysia will continue to have, as long as we maintain this trajectory, we will continue to be a strong economy. There will continue to be demand for ringgit. And in that sense, the long-term view, and that's a house view at HSBC, that the Malaysian ringgit will continue to strengthen, barring, of course, unforeseen things like COVID and interest rates raised by Donald Trump. Anyway,
let me throw you one scenario, right? Government backtracks on petrol subsidies, right? That's one scenario. Possible, politically painful. Government backtracks on petrol subsidies. Ringgit will ringgit lose its shine? You volunteered yourself. You pointed yourself.
No, it's just a question. Me? Malek. So, but how long is a piece of string? I mean, Of course, one of the things that Madani has set up very clearly is fiscal reform. I think Datuk Khairul mentioned there's a reform-minded government. I think that's exactly right. As long, I think, as the government narrative is clear and there's a clear explanation as to why the government changes policy or implementation or timing of policy, I think the markets will get it. Yes, of course, there will be short-term movements, but I keep making the point. The long-term fundamentals around Malaysia, the current long-term policy outlook for Malaysia is very clear. We've got a strong economy, we've got a strong demand in terms of investors coming in and wanting to do things in this country. So my view is that as long as the government keep that narrative, I think we should be okay.
All right. We're coming up to 4:30, which I think I'd like to for you to all catch your buses and things like that on time. But I like, before closing, I'd just like to have each of you sort of answer this question in your most succinct way possible, right? Actually, I'll start with the banks. I'll end with you, Omar. I'll start Novan first, because I think, Omar, you had quite a long session. Novan, why Malaysia?
I think now is a very interesting time. Very rare you have a situation where the government is putting in all these bold reforms. The country structurally is very strong. You have strong economic performance from corporates. We're seeing that in the stronger than expected GDP in the second quarter, where it's powered by domestic consumption, private investments, as well as exports minus imports. You have a tailwind of Fed cutting rates that's paving the way for other central banks to reduce rates. When rates are reduced, the funds need to go somewhere, so the funds will move from developed markets to emerging markets. We hope that ASEAN gets its share from when the funds come to the emerging markets. And within ASEAN, I think Malaysia today, if you stack up Malaysia versus all the other countries in ASEAN, have the ingredients to get its fair share of funds coming into ASEAN. So it's really, I call it the stars are aligned, where you have funds moving from DM to EM, EM to ASEAN, ASEAN to Malaysia, Malaysia being well positioned, structurally strong, and the government is stable, country is stable. So yeah, the stars are aligned.
Okay. Omar? You always look shocked when I ask you a question.
Yeah, because I thought, you're giving me a break. Sorry. Thank you, Malek. Why Malaysia? Why Malaysia? I think I looked at this chart the other day. It's a very interesting chart. So it showed, we went back to GDP to 1960s. At one point, Malaysia was almost at the same level of Korea. Obviously, we've been outstripped way much by then. But I guess the beautiful thing about Malaysia is it's always our potential. I think when we look at each other, people talk about the American dream, but simply there is that Malaysian dream. When you look at how our forefathers thought about the country, the coming together of Malaya when in independence, and then the formation of Malaysia. The potential for us, we're looking at Johor today, we're talking about Johor today, we're talking about Sarawak today. We obviously have seen Klang Valley, we've seen Penang and semiconductors. We're going to talk about the east coast of Peninsula soon. We're going to talk about Sabah at some point. There's always a story for Malaysia. And as long as I think we've got that clarity of purpose, of still being this open trading nation with a skilled workforce, the rule of law, we've got the sort of locational advantages of being in the center of critical trade routes. There's always a purpose. And we're at the heart of ASEAN, which is the most amazing thing. Right? We're at the heart of ASEAN. We have this logistics infrastructure that's so advanced relative to so many other countries. The ability to export, import, connecting with the world. Is that potential? I think it's one word, it's potential.
Yeah.
Thank
the
you.
God-given gift of geography, culture and everything. Dato Khairussaleh?
I think it's why Malaysia now, right? So if we look at maybe up to 2 years ago, whenever we go out and meet investors, right? They will try to pick stocks as opposed to look at country. But I think now that has reversed, right? Because the country itself is carrying everything else. Why? Political stability, coupled with political maturity as well, right? I think maturity is important and not just stable, because I think now we realize that parties have to work together. Secondly is, I think, clarity in direction, right? In terms of the economy Madani and IMP, NETA, yeah, etc. And then with that is about showing results, right? I think there have been results, at least on the diesel subsidy, etc. So I guess credibility has come back. And I think back to the clarity in terms of differentiation for us, right? Surrounding green tech, JSSEZ, what the local GLICs will invest in, and even reform on progressive wage, for example, and infrastructure as well. There'll be a lot more infrastructure projects that might come in. So, I think it flows from the top towards clarity in terms of the intent and direction.
Omar.
Sure you don't want to ask Omar second time? No, I mean, just reiterate, political stability, this is from the investors that I'm meeting. They're wondering, what's going on with Malaysia? Something's happening. This is from US investors. Ourselves have just been covered by JP again, CIMB it's been a hiatus of some 9 years, and it's driven by investor interest. And they've heard about, they look at Malaysia rule of law, their stable government, they're looking at interesting national policies, particularly around NETA, geographically well positioned. They're chasing alpha. That alpha will then help us raise our beta in the market. It's a convergence of events, Malek. So the time really is now.
Yeah. So seize the opportunity and let's go for it. Right. With that, thank you very much to all our panelists on this this Invest Malaysia conference. Thank you for closing it, and thank you very much everyone for coming. Hopefully you invest in
Moderator.
Malaysia. Yes.
Thank you, Malek, the moderator.
Oh, me? No, yeah, it's okay. For me, the only self-interest I have is I want to beam BFM into Johor, because I really want to, from Johor, I can beam it to Singapore, and then every day they'll get conversations about this every day. So that's my self-interest, right? So there you go. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Malek. And thank you, panelists, for your candor. Can I invite you to please step forward for a group photo?